That might work. Councillors, can I have your attention? And welcome to you all, and also to the gallery for the meeting of the Wellington Shire Council on Tuesday, May the 1st, 2018. Members of the public gallery should note that the Council records and publishes Council meetings via webcast to enhance the accessibility of Council meetings to the broader Wellington community. These recordings are also archived and may be published on Council's website for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. Members of the public who are not in attendance at the Council meeting but who wish to communicate with the Council via the webcasting chat room should lodge their questions or comments early in the meeting to ensure that their submissions can be dealt with at the end of the meeting. Please could gallery visitors and councillors ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting. Please stand for acknowledgement and prayer. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Gunai people, and pay respects to their elders past and present. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon the Wellington Shire Council, its councillors, officers, staff and their families. We pray for your guidance in our decisions so that the true good of the Wellington Shire Council may result to the benefit of all residents and community groups. Amen. We move on to item A2. We have no apologies. Item A3, no declarations of conflicts of interest. Item A4, confirmation of the minutes of the previous council meeting. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I move the Council adopt the minutes and resolutions of the ordinary council meeting of the 17th of April 2018.
Seconded by Councillor Stevens. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Fine with that? Item A5, business arising from previous meeting. Mr. CEO, we have none.
None, Mayor.
Thank you. Item A6, acceptance of late items. We have a late item. Thank you, Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll move that this late item be accepted.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Hall. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Now we have a mover for the motion. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I move that the Mayor write to Mr James Pinder, Chief Executive Officer of V-Line, requesting that all Gippsland passengers be provided discount fares while trains are replaced with buses over the next 3 weeks, and for any other planned disruption into the future.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Hall. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Bye.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I thought I'd congratulate the state government first on their level crossing upgrades and truck upgrades that are doing currently. Also, it was exciting to see the testing of the Velocity train last Wednesday to Bensdale. We're all excited to see a better train service to Gippsland residents and look forward to the replacement of our old trains to newer Velocity trains in August. But when the service is compromised, that a discount to the fare in place for inconvenience that is occurring. So I think it's fair and just that we write to the CEO and ask when services in the next 3 weeks, but also for the future, that residents of Gippsland do get a discount fare.
Whoops, that's on it. Just fighting the technology. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Bye. And I'll be most delighted to write that letter. Moving on to item A8, receiving of petitions or joint letters. Item A8.2, receipt of a petition. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll move the Council receive the attached petition in relation to the maintenance of Banks Road and Lays Road, Gormandale.
Second, Councillor Marr. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. You'll recall that this petition was, I think, handed to Council at the conclusion of the last Council meeting, and I'd just like to comment that since that meeting there has been work done on Banks Road, so I'd just like to congratulate the staff for the work they've done. I understand that a further report is being prepared in relation to the matters contained in the petition, and we'll look forward to receiving that in the very near future. But just like to reiterate that work has been done in a couple of places on Banks Road where it was needed, and we'll await with interest the detailed report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to item A9, invited addresses, presentations and acknowledgements. There's just a couple of acknowledgements I'd like to make, specifically just having the press releases from the Andrews Labor State budget, and there's some really exciting news for Wellington Shire. Most specifically, the most exciting is the announcement that there is a budget line of $25 million for a new TAFE campus to be constructed on the Port of Sale precinct that used to be the old tennis courts. It's fantastic news and really great outcome. It's been a great community effort that has gone over for about 10 years. There's been advocacy from a number of councils over the time. Businesses have come together to work to advocate on behalf of training and student access to tertiary training in our area. So this outcome is what we've all been working for, and it's just a fantastic outcome. But I really encourage the community members that have turned out previously in support of this, the concept, to now embrace their local TAFE, support the institution, and look forward to sending their trainees, their students, their children, and also older people looking at retraining to support this exciting development. So it's one of the linchpins that was required to the development of and the prosperity of Wellington Shire, to have this tertiary education facility locally, and it's just so exciting that this has come out in the budget. Not a research line, not a promise, but a budget line for our new TAFE. So fantastic outcome. There's also another one that I noticed scanning down the line, which is the $100 million funding across Victoria for the local roads and rural roads to support that area that's been sadly lacking in the past. So it really helps us address our over 3,000 kilometres of roads in Wellington. So we will certainly be looking forward to accessing some of those new funds. And to say that the MAV has the Municipal Association Victoria has been working very hard to achieve this outcome for the rural and regional areas of Victoria. So another really great outcome for Wellington. On a more sort of closer note, I think is also the fact that acknowledge both Anzac Day and the commemorations last week across the Shire, and they continue to be really well supported in all our communities to come out and support and remember the ultimate sacrifice, but also the sacrifice that continues with families and individuals that continue to serve in all fields at the moment in the Defence Forces. And also it was actually a milestone of 75 years of the commencement of the creation of RAF Base East Sale, and certainly significant changes have happened over that period, and the most significant is probably now and into the very near future, when the new training school operates starting from early next year. And also as we see many of the flyovers over Wellington, which I think there ended up being about 5 across the Shire, which was a great support from our RAF base, was in the new PC-21. So it's really great to see those in the sky. And also one more, if I beg the indulgence of my colleagues, is that I'd like to make a special acknowledgement of one of our own employees. The Local Government Women's Association Bursary Awards was held last week, and there's only, as they say, there's only ever one winner, but because the applicants were of a significant quality, that they made 2 special commendations, and one of the recipients of a special commendation was Sharon Houlihan, which was our Executive Manager for Major Projects in the Community and Cultural Area Department. And really she has been a standout officer in all fields, but probably most significant in what the community has seen of her endeavours is she was the managing officer, project manager for this build. Not only for this building itself, but the precinct, the skate park. And not only did she do that, but she actually wrote the grants and submitted them and spoke to them. And the success of this project was through her skill and drive and passion and sleepless nights to see it home. Not the only one, of course, but certainly a lot was on her shoulders in that. So she has extended herself in a number of other fields, but this is probably the most obvious and significant one that our community can celebrate in her hard work on their behalf. So congratulations to Sharon, and I hope the CEO will pass on all of the councillors both respect and congratulations on this significant award.
Certainly will, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't usually have such a long list, but it's quite a significant day for us today and our community. Item A10, no questions on notice. Item B, Report of Delegates. Councillor Hall, you have a report from the Rural Regional Forum. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Last Thursday, the CEO and I attended the Rural and Regional Forum in Melbourne, and that comprises the 48 councils across rural Victoria. The meetings are held twice a year, and they deal with issues, significant issues, particularly in relation to rural areas, but also emerging issues that are a statewide problem. And of course, the meeting last week centred on the recyclable rubbish that's not been recyclable so well at the moment, and the issues that it raised around the state. One of the problems that they believe is causing the issue right now with the contamination, and I'll get onto that in a second, is the fact that the three bins are causing confusion as to what people put into them, because the refuse, when it goes to China, is going over between 10 and 20% contaminated, and China only wants 0.5% and nothing more. In fact, a load of ours arrived in China not so long ago, and it was classified as 0.9, and they sent it back home. The worldwide expectation, because this isn't just confined to Australia, it is confined to Europe and also America, and there's a field of thought that perhaps this is tit for tat for China and the world trade as it's happening, but that's pure speculation, of course. Now, the future is going to take a lot of hard work. Originally, local government wasn't included in any task force to work through the issues, although we've got the problem. And however, that was rectified last Friday, and at this stage I haven't had the results of that meeting. One of the things that came up in discussion from the floor in relation to this problem is that perhaps we should be looking at our own recycling plant rather than sending it up to China. And there's over $500 million of sitting of our money, local government money, in a little nest egg. The state government's looking after it so that they can put solar panels on trams, but not help us to rectify the problem we've got out in rural Victoria. And one of our councils from the other side of the state is in a very diabolical situation, and it's costing them $300 a tonne to send their byproducts to tips in Melbourne. for us and for most of our councils of a similar nature to ourselves, where we used to get around about $60 a tonne from the contractors, we're now paying $70 a tonne to dispose of it, so our ratepayers are now $130 a tonne worse off. And that is not just at us, that's right across the state of Victoria. So we need a new stimulus to encourage local companies to get involved. There's plenty of products out there that can be made. China's proved it, and we need to start looking at the home markets. So down the track, we'll see where we go, and maybe through local government we may put a motion up at a next meeting in relation to the use of that $500 million that can be gainfully employed by local government and industry. One of the issues, the next issue that was raised was in relation to insurance. Anybody who's been following the financial review will have seen the JLT, who are the underwriters per local government, 600 councils involved, and they have been sorely tested by 3 other smaller companies, and at this stage we're not too sure where it's going to go because of the investigations and the follow through, as we're seeing with the banks, that starts opening the envelope, they end up opening the entire package. And so we'll follow that with a lot of interest, because the purpose of the MAV is to have our insurances level themselves out rather than go highs and lows. One of the other issues that were raised, and some of the councillors would have heard it this morning, was Pick My Project. It was a presentation that was done on the advice of the Premier's Department. It was evident that a lot of effort had been put into it, but not a great deal of thought as to how to drive it forward. There were many, many questions from some councillors and particularly CEOs around the floor, because it's not a fair and equally balanced distribution. Organisations with huge membership, based on the formula that they use at the moment, will have a lot more clout than necessary ones with 4, 6 or 8 community benefits. The releases for the SES, and this is an interesting one, that now the councils are leasing land to the SES, but the funding is now coming out of the fire cover. The government is looking for between 20 and 40-year peppercorn rent. The bugbear is that Delft have said not on their land, and so there's a little issue that everybody thought we were solve the SES problem, and now we've got a government department saying, well, you know, it's not on. So we'll see where that goes. At the moment, there's hundreds of planning amendments in the system. We're coming towards the end of the term of the current government. They've asked that any planning issues that we have, we pick out the ones that are most urgent and get them up for consideration. But not everything in planning will be able to be dealt with before the end of the term. From the meeting, as I just said, we're running into a state election, and there's the MAV's call to the party document, which will be released after Friday. What they're suggesting is that we meet with the candidates and put our cases, not just with sitting members, but don't forget the upper house members. They also have rights and duties and obligations, but they tend to be forgotten because they don't hit the paper too often. But so that's an issue that we need to go. And the figuring by the experts that there's currently 30 marginal seats. That's 30 seats with 5% or less. So for local government, if we get our act together, there's a fair chance that we can get some great promises. Can't guarantee great deliveries, but we'll go for the promises for a start. And finally, we dealt with the financial sustainability of rural and regional councils. As we all know, there are several councils that are not big councils, big areas, not a lot of population to pay for the infrastructure, maintenance works. But as Ballarat and Bendigo, of course, have already put overtures out to a couple of councils they've each got to consider that they may be able to absorb them with just an office in each of the places. The suggestion has come that perhaps those small councils can stay as they are, but they receive a greater share of the federal assistance grants. And that's something that we and all other councils will need to watch, because we also need our fair share of the federal assistance grants. But overall, it was a good meeting, probably one of the most positive and thought-provoking meetings that we have. They come up twice a year. I've been going for a long time, and I'd say that's probably one of the first I really enjoyed.
Thank you, Councillor Hall, for both representing us and for your delegates report. Moving on to item C, Officers' Report. Item C1, it's not the Chief Executive Officer report cycle. Item C2.1, Assembly of Councillors. Councillor Bai.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I move that Council note and receive the attached Assembly of Council records for the period 10th of April 2018 to the 24th of April 2018.
Seconder, Councillor Ma. Is that motion opposed? Motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Item C2.2, adoption of S6, Instrument of Delegation, Council to Members of Staff. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move that Council adopt the updated Instrument of Delegation to Members of Council staff as attached.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Ripper. Is that motion opposed? The motion's not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I mean, this is basically, I suppose, a technical thing for us to do. There have been some amendments to the Food Act and the Planning Act, and this is just updating our delegations to council staff in accordance with those amendments. Just to clarify, there are a couple of, in the schedule, there are a couple of places where it says not delegated, and that just means that there aren't requirements to delegate any matters to council staff, just so we know for sure, because I was a little bit confused about that, to be honest. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Moving on to item C3, item C3.1, Building Permits Report. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to move, please, that Council note the report of building permits issued from the 1st of October 2017 to the 31st of December 2017.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Bai. Is that motion opposed? The motion is not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor McCubbin.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to me what is a beautiful set of figures. And if I could point the Council's attention to these, quite often building permits, as Council doesn't directly administer building permits anymore, or haven't done for many years, we do of course register them, and they do give us a little bit of an indication about where there's activity centres around our wonderful shire. They're an empirical piece of evidence about where I guess where the interest is, where people are building, where they're developing, what's exactly going on. And quite often we hear from people in the gallery about, you know, we should be doing planning schemes in certain areas. Well, if we look at the building permit figures, it gives us an indication of where those hot spots are, where is indeed the place at which our activity is. And if we look through this beautiful set of numbers, we see some surprising figures. Carajung, which has come up there, $711,000, certainly hitting above its weight from two obviously big things there. If you look down Valencia Creek, I think, also has something like $600,000 worth of activities there. The ones I find most exciting, and look, with all due respect to the people of Port Albert, an area that I love and we should be concentrating on. We all love Port Albert, and they've come in here and told us about, you know, the importance of Port Albert. But look, really, the building interest there over the last 3 months was a little disappointing, 471,000. When you place that against such epicentres around the Shire, and I mean this seriously, like Loch Sport, for example, which is about $1.2 million worth of development, Maffra of $1.4 million, and that other location wedged nicely in between them. 33 properties have been developed and built amongst what is a most delightful section of our beautiful Wellington Shire, and that is the Longford area. I will, of course, mention that Sale, and oftentimes we're criticised for focusing too much on the Sale region. I've always disputed that. But if you look at the figures, if you look at these beautiful set of figures, $11 million worth of building and development is occurring within the Sale region. $11 million. And I guess that heartens us. The Shire has done an enormous amount of work in developing not only the Wellington Shire, but within this wonderful town in terms of the building of which we're standing in. And you can see that that $11 million is reflected in the broader community as building permits are going on, people are growing and investing within our largest town in our rural shire. The point I'm making is not necessary to look at this over a 3-month period, but to draw attention to a set of figures that we often ignore, and that is the building permits demonstrating empirically what is going on in our wonderful shire. Do not just rush past this item. Stop, look, examine, and love them. Thank you.
I'm sure they're feeling the love. Moving on. Hard act to follow. Item C3.2, Statutory Planning Customer Survey results.
Yes, I'd like to move that Council note the results of the 2017 Statutory Planning Applicant and Objector Survey refer as per Attachment 1.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Stevens. Is that motion opposed? The motion is not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Stevens.
That's okay. That's okay. I'd just like to say that this is a great survey result. Our Statutory Planning Department undertakes an annual survey of the planning permit applicants and the objectors each year. This is something that the Wellington Shire has chosen to do, and I think that they are the only ones who currently do it. Correct me if I'm wrong. This highlights that the council is willing to listen and take on feedback accordingly. The survey results are a benchmark on performance, and it's considered a great opportunity for those applicants to actually provide it and for the council to actually receive it and listen to it. 308 planning applicants and 49 objectors were sent surveys, and of these, 22% of responses were received from both groups. Interesting, a point to look at is that a large percentage of the responses were actually received by post or hard copy. So we would probably presume that a lot would have been sent by way of electronic email and so forth, but everyone chose to send it by hard copy, and I think that that says something. The survey results are really good, and we need to say a big thank you to those that took the time to complete them. But what this survey actually does, it shows that the planning department is willing to listen, and the Wellington Shire is proactive in taking on board the feedback from the applicants that have gone through this planning process. And a big well done to all, because from looking at the survey results, we can see that they're actually doing something very right. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor Maher. Yes, the previous year's results were very good, and would have been a hard act to follow, and they certainly did. They were even better. So, and even particularly the area of people who dealt with the planning department who were either in dispute or not actually, were opposing, also felt that they were dealt with in a fair and equal matter. So that's really a really great indicator. So well done, and may it pass on to the team members our thanks from the whole council and the community. Item C4, no natural environment. Item C5.1, Newry Rec Reserve. Committee of Management, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to move the council receive the minutes from the Newry Recreation Reserve Committee of Management's general meeting held on the 26th of February 2018.
I have a seconder. Councillor Ripper. Is that motion opposed? The motion is not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, this is a very small and diverse committee. Comprising just about every organisation in the town, including the Hall Committee, the Motorbike Club, junior sport, the CFA, but they're very, very conscious and aware of the requirements of making sure Newry stays as a place of interest. Financially, they're stable. They work well together as a team, and right now they're about ready to let tenders for the fencing repair job over there. They got their quotes, and the only problem that I'm having and since I inherited this committee, that every second meeting clashes with the Gordon Street Reserve. So might have to have a talk about changing the date.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. They're still getting there. Is the fence going to stop the kangaroos from coming out on the pitch? Item C5.2, the Maffra Recreation Reserve Committee of Management minutes. Councillor Ripper.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council receive the minutes from the Maffra Recreational Reserve Committee of Management's general meeting held on 5th of March 2018, including the financial statement.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Marr. Is that motion opposed? Motion not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Ripper. You're in? Fine. Thank you. Yes. Item C5.3, Gippsland Art Gallery Advisory Group Committee. Councillor Rossetti.
Yes, I move that Council 1 receive the minutes of the Gippsland Art Gallery Advisory Group meeting held on 5th of March 2018, and 2 approve changes to the Gippsland Art Gallery Advisory Group terms of reference.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McCubbin. Is that motion opposed? The motion not opposed. The motion is carried. Councillor Rossetti.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to say I was an apology for this meeting, but it's the first meeting of a changeover group of committee, and the advisory group, the members of that drawn from the public, are really of help to the director of the gallery, to council, in making sure that we're on the right path with acquisitions, how the gallery runs. As you read in the minutes there's a lot of excitement about the new gallery, and certainly the community response to it has been exceptional. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councillor McCubbin.
Mayor, and I do apologise if this was mentioned while I was away. Can I also acknowledge too the death of Polyexi Papintreo? I think I've spelt that right, pronounced that right? Yeah. Who passed away in April. I'd like to acknowledge the fact that The Wanderer is actually a piece of work that we've used in Icon as the gallery for many, many years, and her work, of course, was exhibited within our opening exhibition. She's been a great friend of the gallery, and indeed, I understand, well, I saw just recently that we've put a little memorial in there, and I'd like to congratulate the gallery for having done so. Thank you.
Yes, a significant photographer throughout Australia and exhibited internationally, and yeah, she will be considerably missed, not only by her colleagues but certainly her family and friends. So yes, thank you, Councillor McCubbin, for that note. Item D, no urgent business. item E, chat room comments.
Yes, Mayor. We have one question from Mr. Alan Haywood of Pisendale, and just summarising Mr. Haywood's query, it's around car parking. So Mr. Haywood's raised a number of issues or concerns he has with car parking around the Australia Post business in York Street, the back of the building here at Port of Sale, Disraeli Street, and one or two other sites, and is just asking Council what action, if any, will be taken in relation to car parking. So we shall respond to Mr. Haywood, Mayor, and provide a copy of that response to all councillors.
Thank you, CEO. Any other further gallery comments? This is the time that there is the opportunity for members of the public to raise any particular matters other than those on the agenda, and they will, please note that they will be recorded, their name, and they'll have 3 minutes. So, yes, Mr. Barraclough.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wish to comment on, I realise it's way too late, on Council's response to the reduction of allocation of saw logs to the ash mill. Yeah, I realise it's late, but no one told me that you changed your meetings from the first of the month used to be an evening meeting, as I recall it, and I did come in here one evening several months ago to comment. My comments are that the reduction of allocation to saw logs to the ash mill was put across simply as a conflict between green issues and timber harvesting, and in particular the leadbeater's possum, but that isn't how I believe it should have been looked at. The ash mill was drawing their allocation largely from 1939 regrowth ash, 78, 79-year-old regrowth mountain ash produces very few defective logs, yet the largest amount of that was being chipped at Maryvale. It was being chipped at a reduction of royalties to the state, and that is the first issue I think that should have been raised by this council. That is probably the major contributor to the loss of allocation to the ash mill. Second thing is our forests are simply managed, our timber resource in particular in relation to forests is simply managed as reserving an X amount to keep the greenies happy and making X amount available to timber harvesting, and both are absolutely disgracefully managed. Clear felling is incompatible with proper fire management of the forests with fire. The forests have never been managed to protect them from fire, and there was a large loss of resource to fires, particularly 2009, and also the management of the forest by conservation management is just an absolute disaster. I have been following the timber harvesting issues for probably close to 50 years. I put in many photographs of good saw logs going to being chipped into the timber industry inquiry around 1983, and that is where a large amount of Hayfield's saw log resource originally went. It was chipped. And while I think our Shire should have been involved in the debate, it's something that will affect our Shire. I think the Wellington Shire should have been involved in the debate at a much higher level than it was.
We'll just take that as a comment on that one. Thank you very much. Any other further gallery comments? Thank you. I might have to ask the gallery to leave as we need to go into closed council to deal with matters. So can I have a motion, please? Councillor Stevens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 89 subsection 2 of the Local Government Act 1989 to consider personnel matters.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rossetti. Is that motion opposed? Motion not opposed. Motion is carried.